Hey, construction enthusiasts. Before we dive into today's episode, a quick shout out to the OGCA Construction Symposium, the go-to event for industry leaders. This year, it's bigger and better, with an expanded education program, an interactive trade show, and exclusive networking opportunities. Join us at the Blue Mountain Resort and Conference Center from April 11th to 13th. Visit ogca.ca for details. Don't miss out on the OGCA Construction Symposium, where innovation meets industry excellence. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Construction Record Podcast. I'm digital media editor Warren Frey, and with me today I have
Kris Lengieza, global technology evangelist for Procore.
We've had Kris on before to talk about sort of as a guru about tech and construction. And so we did a thing last year, 2023 predictions for what would kind of bubble up and be more significant. And let's kind of look back at 23. What do you think did bubble up? And what do you think took you by surprise that you didn't see coming?
Yeah, well, I think there was a lot of really great things that came out in 2023. I think one of the things that caught us all by surprise, to be honest with you, is a lot of the developments around AI and ML. It's not that they were new things, like they've been around for a really long time, but early in the year when we were talking to customers and out in the industry and up in Canada talking to folks, they were, kind of like, AI, man, they were kind of lukewarm on it. But then we saw that whole like ChatGPT, LLM thing come along. And all of a sudden later in the back half of the year, everybody's like, so what's your plan? What are y'all doing? How's this going to impact the product? And so, Procore, we obviously had been working on a lot of this stuff for quite some time. And which is really exciting because we were able to actually put some stuff, launch some stuff last year at Groundbreak with LLMs and Copilot. And so that was a little bit of the surprise. I think a lot of the things that we were right about were continued challenges with labor shortage, backlogs, material procurement. We expected to see that a lot throughout the course of the year. That still continues and is still impacting projects today. I think one of the things that is getting better is some of the supply chain is starting to feel a little bit of relief. We're not seeing prices go down necessarily, but the wait times are not getting longer. They're kind of staying a lot flatter, which I think is a good sign. We've kind of hit the worst of it and they're probably moving towards a better, which means though for 2024 to like kind of set up like what are we excited about this year, that I think people are really prioritizing risk management. How do they really start to look at how to manage the risk that's coming along with the labor shortage, what's coming along with procurement and materials, and just the project backlogs that they're managing, and that's top of mind for so many folks. And then sustainability because of that, right? And we're doing a lot more to be better stewards of the environment. We're tracking more of our carbon footprint, and really focusing also on the people in construction because of that labor shortage, right? We can't afford to have people leaving the industry. It's a traditionally very hard industry. And so focuses around mental health, and how do we recruit better, keep people here, keep them happy, keep them productive, because we have so many people that are retiring and aging out of the industry as well.
Now, you mentioned ChatGPT, and that is, I'm assuming, a pretty important component. What's some of the plumbing behind the scenes that is also AI powered, but people don't generally know about, but it's actually the kind of stuff that gets stuff done?
Yeah, it's actually a really great question. So I think a lot of the things that get done behind the screen are very traditional machine learning algorithms, right? Very traditional artificial intelligence where you're using tremendous data sets amassed over years to create a predictive model, right? What ChatGPT did is they took large language models and provided that interactive interface, right? And so when you look at, and I'll use some examples from Procore, when you look at things like image recognition, much of that is powered by artificial intelligence and machine learning. What LLMs did to that is they superpowered that so that users like you and I, who are not experts in machine learning, can actually use that data more effectively in our day-to-day workflows, right? And so whether it's creating a new image, or it's searching through millions of images and huge data sets. We now can do that in a very conversational way because of those large language models that are out there. And so I think that's where we're going to see a lot of efficiency gains, is now that we're pairing multiple different types of artificial intelligence together so that it becomes more usable for folks. Then there are things like, artificial intelligence that are making its way into like robotics, which is trying to combat some of the labor challenges, right? We understand that we don't have enough people, so can we do layout with a robot? Can we automate data collection on a job site with, the Boston Dynamics Spot robot? And those are using AI and ML and that image recognition in real time to navigate around a job site, to collect information, and to update progress. And so, as you said before, it's not necessarily that these things are kind of new, but it's how we're incorporating them into products, into solutions for the field, that they're actually being put to use.
Well, for example, I was just a World of Concrete last month, and they were talking. I was at a robotic session, and they showed this thing. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was basically, they called it a Roomba with a printer, and it did what you were talking about, layout. It would just go in, it would put the blueprint on the floor, and then they had another thing. Again, the names escape me. I wrote a story about it, but that was a month ago, where this thing basically punches holes like a person would, and it has the awkward, you can't see this, but the stance that really leads to injury. And it's a robot, so it's a filing cabinet with an arm. It doesn't need to worry about that. And when dust comes on top of it, it doesn't get a respiratory disease. So what are some of those advances? And those are more low cost. I mean, they're still expensive, but they're not Boston Dynamics expensive. So what are some of the more low cost sort of, I guess that's an example of Boston Dynamics does the big, expensive, impressive thing, and then everybody else kind of fills in the cracks underneath that.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is, so like, I think you might be talking about either Dusty Robotics.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah,
yes.
So Dusty, yeah, it's a Roomba with a printer attached to it that does your layout for you. And the reason that becomes so much more accessible from a price point is because it's actually doing work on the job that you would have to put somebody else against. And so they're not expensive pieces of equipment. They're not cheap, but when you reuse them over and over again, so if you have a many multi-story building where you have to do layout 40, 50 times, it starts to pay for itself pretty quickly, right? But it also means that you have to prepare appropriately for it, right? You've got to have the information and the data to load into it to be effective. The one that's drilling the holes in the ceilings could be the Hilti J-Bot.
That is the one, yes.
Yep. Which is, that's a very like hard job to be up on a ladder or a scaffold moving around. And you have to like kind of commit to that. That's a much bigger expense. There's also logistics of how that thing gets moved around the job. So like I would go, it's almost like, hey, like Dusty, Hilti J-Bot, and then like Boston Dynamics robots is like, you have to kind of build what you want on top of the Boston Dynamics as like the high expensive end. So it's becoming much more approachable. It's getting to a place where it's like, oh, this is like could fit within a job budget, that you could actually start to put some of the stuff out on a project.
Now, AI was kind of the thing that took us by, I don't know if surprise is the right word, but it was the acceleration of it sure did. So what's for 2024 and 2025, what's the thing that you think is going to come out of left field and surprise everybody?
I think we will still be surprised at how fast we see innovation in AI in 2024. If you think that the things that have happened over the last 6 months and how this is developed was surprising, I think the rapid speed of innovation is going to catch people by surprise again. I think people are not really ready for how quickly software companies, hardware companies, contractors are able to innovate because how fast the technology is moving. It's almost like when mobile devices first kind of showed up on the job site, it was transformational. And then like version 1 of the iPhone to version 2 were like, even just like, it was still a big transformation again. And so I think that will actually surprise us a bit again on that front. And then I think the other thing is, I think we will be surprised, and this is a good surprise, on how much time people are spending focusing on their people. This is a good thing. I think last year was a painful year from a labor perspective. It's not going to get any better. And so I am excited that people are now really leaning into making sure that their people are top of mind. Mental health's a key concern. We're reaching into more diverse works groups, right? Bringing more women and underrepresented groups will be a higher priority. And so hiring is such a challenge right now that I think we're going to see that accelerate, and people
Hmm.
invest much more time in career pathing, ways for caregivers to work in the industry. We just need more people, so we have to be more flexible on who we can bring in. And there's so many talented people out there that would love to work in this industry.
Well, and speaking of talent, what are some ways technology can retain the at least knowledge base of like there's a ton of people who are retiring, boomers basically, right? And
Yep.
or even
Yep.
older Gen X really, who are retiring, and then and then that just kind of evaporates, and you got to start from square one again. So how do you preserve that knowledge? With the robotics session talked about that, about how we can get these guys in at a desk level, so they're still there to draw from.
Yeah. So I've been on the road the last few weeks meeting with a lot of customers, and this is so top of mind for construction executives across the globe. They are so worried that when that generation, the boomers, walks out the door,
Hmm.
that everything they learned over the last 30, 40, 50 years goes with them. And this is actually a place where technology can really help us, but we have to harvest that knowledge. And what I mean by that is we have to be able to collect it in some way. And being able to collect that data in a repository that then we can train a model to look at it and go, hey, I see what you did on these last 3 projects. Now, institutional knowledge like that typically sits with a superintendent or a project manager, and that's why you want that one that's done that project 3 times before. But how do we take that out of their brain and then make that available to the next generation, right? And that's where I think a lot of the search, the large language models, going through large, just conversational, unstructured data sets to be able to extract that information is going to be really, really helpful. But what we need the help from the boomers are very similar to the way you talk about putting them at a desk to control a
Hmm.
robot. We need their help with the validation, right? To make sure that it's getting it right. Like when we get those first few prompts and we get those first few sets of recommendations, we need them to go, oh, yep, that's what I would do. And they'll continue to train and teach the systems. And so that's where I think the technology can help us with that. And I think the second part to that is the younger generation coming into this industry comes in operating on their phone every day.
Hmm.
They don't think about what they're going to use for technology as their job of SAP and like green screen softwares. They want things that look like Instagram and Facebook. And so the more that we can make simple, easy to use tools that they can pick up and use quickly that help them get their job done, but still guide them based on historical knowledge, the more people I think will retain in this industry. And we've seen some of our customers use that as a competitive differentiator when they recruit, as talking about how advanced and how they're investing in technology so they can do their job better.
Another thing I've heard was people referred to drones as flying superintendents. And so does that indicate that they're just kind of like part of the landscape now? And if so, where's the next step for drones, if there is one, or is it just has it kind of settled itself?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. A flying superintendent. I mean, from a the ability to cover a lot of ground and take in a lot of information, yes. I don't know that we've got to the point where they can 100% recognize all the things that they should be following, but that's where we'll be amazed by the technologies, because we can teach it to look for those things that a superintendent would traditionally look for. I think these things are becoming more commonplace, and the reason is the generation. It's been around for 10 years, right? So there's a whole generation of leaders in construction companies now that have been in the industry for 10 or 15 years that are making their way into leadership positions that have kind of never done the job almost without technology. And so as you move those people who there was a time where they never used it and they didn't think they needed it out of the industry, and those who are moving into positions of power understand that they've always done it that way, the barrier to do I want technology goes away, right? And so yeah, things like drones become more commonplace because people have been seeing them around for 10 years, and it's just how we do it now.
Okay, and finally, you do a lot of speaking about these very topics. Where's the next couple places people can come see you online or in person for that?
Yeah, great question. So I will actually be having a panel discussion in Chicago the third week of March, talking about AI in construction, a lot of the practical applications at the ENR Emerging Leaders Conference. Actually, next week I'm doing a webinar similar on AI, hot topic right now, with Placer Solutions, Microsoft, and the Association of General Contractors here in the U.S. That's a webinar they can find me on. And just follow me on LinkedIn and social media. I'm putting a lot of content out there, redirecting to a lot of other people's content because there's just so much good stuff out there for people to kind of follow and just try and stay in tune with what's happening.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us today, Kris.
Thanks, Warren.
And that's it for this episode of the Construction Record Podcast. You can hear us on Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music, as well as on the Journal of Commerce and Daily Commercial News websites and the constructionrecord.libsyn.com. Thanks for listening.